بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our discussion based on 40 hadith by Imam Khomeini, and this is our last session on HUBB. There is a remaining chapter about this subject, and here Imam Khomeini says that every human being has in his or her fitrah, in his God-given nature, love for absolute perfection. In other words, part of his heart is faced towards absolute beauty, absolute perfection. This is like fabric, this is inside us. Then he says everything that we do is based on this. Every step that we make, it's based on this. But people have different understanding of what is absolute perfection. If you see perfection in money, then you may see absolute perfection in having unlimited money. If you see perfection in power, you would seek absolute power. Depending on where you find perfection. Ahlul Akhirah, they have found and they have come to believe that perfection is in ranks and stages in the hereafter. And their hearts are thinking and yearning for those. Ahlullah, who are higher than Ahlul Akhirah. For them, even Akhirah, even heaven, is not the absolute perfection. It's not the ultimate end. Ahlullah have found in Allah Himself absolute perfection and absolute beauty. He quotes this ayah, وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. I have turned my face towards the one who has created sky and earth. So their face is directed towards Allah, not even towards Akhirah. Or there is a hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that I have some conditions, some moments with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that neither an angel who is very close, Malakul Muqarrab, nor a prophet who has been sent, a Nabi Mursal, can cope with. Very, very intimate relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you say to such people, do you see heaven as absolute perfection? They say heaven is good, but not the ultimate good, not the absolute good. We want to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. our interest in heaven, because heaven is closer to Allah than dunya, and of course than hell. But we want to go there to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, for example, you are going to meet your, I don't know, for example, beloved, your very holy, for example, Imam or Marja or Alim. And the meeting is going to take place in a very beautiful place or in a 5-star hotel. But for you, hotel is not the main thing. You appreciate that the meeting is taking place in that hotel, but hotel is not your end. For mu'mineen, heaven is important, but it's not the main thing. So, Ahlul Akhirah see perfection in ranks and levels of Akhirah. Ahlul Haq, Ahlullah, they see it in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ahlul Dunya, they see it in pleasures of dunya, in the beauties of dunya, in the possessions of dunya, in the power and reputation of dunya. Then he says, and this is very important point, maybe this is the key point in this chapter. He says, every group of people, when they reach some levels or some degrees of what they think to be absolute perfection, their thirst would increase. If they see it in dunya, if they see it in money, the more money they have, the more thirsty they become. If they see it in eating and drinking a pleasure of dunya, when they have it, they become more interested. They are never satisfied because it is not absolute, but they don't also remain the same. They would want it more. Sometimes people who have not experienced something are in a much better position psychologically and emotionally than people who have experienced it and then they lost it or they don't have it anymore. For example, if there are very, very delicious types of food and you have never tasted them, you may still want to have them when you hear such things are available, but those who have experienced it and found it to be more delicious than ordinary food and whatever available, they wanted more. And they would not actually enjoy that much what they have because they have tasted something better. So he says, هرچه انسان از ملک و ملکوت دارا شود, whatever human beings possess from mulk, from this dunya, or from malakut, from the kingdom of Allah, from the world of spirits, و هرچه کمالات نفسانی یا کنوز دنیایی یا سلطنت و ریاست پیدا کند. The more spiritual merits and virtues he gains. If he's a person who is interested in akhlaq and finds everything to be in akhlaq and see absolute perfection here, or if he finds it in dunya, for example, the more treasures of dunya he has, the more power he has, the more authority he has. اشتیاقش روز افزون گردد. Day by day, his eagerness becomes more. و آتش عشق او و آتش عشقش افروخته کردد. And the blaze of his love for this end, this ultimate goal, would be more and more stronger. So this is why we said last week that our attachment to dunya increases when we gain some pleasure from dunya. The same is our attachment to akhirah, the same is our attachment to virtues. When you have experience and you taste it, then you would want it more. But then he says, the problem is that these can never satisfy them. For example, if someone is after shahawat, after lower desires, the more he moves in that direction, the more greedy and thirsty he becomes. If someone goes after power and riyasa, to be leading, to be controlling, to be authority, he wants more. So Imam Khomeini says, if they give him one country, he wants to go to another country and add it to his territory. If you give him the whole earth, he would want to also add other planets to his territory. But this poor, confused person, bichare, he says, Wali bichare, nemidanat. This poor person doesn't know that his fitra is not interested in power or money or those types of pleasure. It's not a matter of you have it less, therefore you are not satisfied, so you should have more. No, actually the more you would have it, the more thirsty you become. You have to look for real perfection, real beauty. And this is why no one has tranquility and serenity if he goes for anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because our heart is made in the way that we should only be feeling happy when we are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like, for example, imagine there's a child who is crying. This child wants his real parents. People see this child is crying and take the child to another woman or another man who is not his mother or his father. The child is crying. They add to the women or men, the child would cry more. Even if you give 1,000, other people to the child would not be satisfied. The child wants something that only mother and father can give him. So he says the key point as conclusion here is because human beings by their hearts, they are attentive to absolute perfection. Whatever they collect from attractions of dunya and possessions of dunya, their heart becomes more affected. Their greediness increases. But the people who have found perfection outside dunya, then, for example, if they have found it in akhirah or in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more they move, the less interest they have in dunya. And sometimes they feel totally free from dunya, as they don't see that much need. Very, very basic and simple needs. they are really rich. They feel, those who are content and those who have no interest in dunya as an independent aim, they have freedom. They have ghana, real rich is here. They need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the real rich. So the hadith by which, or with which we started this section about Hubbud Dunya, maybe refers to this fact. When it says that whoever starts his day or night while dunya is his greater concern, Allah would put poverty between his or her two eyes. But whoever starts the day or night while akhirah is his greater concern, Allah would put ghina, richness or rich, in his heart. So this is very, very important. If you find your perfection outside dunya, you would feel more and more comfortable in dunya, and your affairs will come together. You would have greater chance of success. Then he mentions this hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. من كثر اشتباكه بالدنيا كان أشد لحسرته عند فراقه. Whoever is more engaged with dunya, at the time of departure from dunya, his regret would be stronger. Because as we said last session, every pleasure in dunya, every gain in dunya, every achievement in dunya is like a new rope to fasten and tie you to dunya, and it will be more difficult for you to release yourself. So the more you are engaged with dunya, the more regret you would have, the more pain you feel when you want to die. عن ابن أبي يعفور قال سمعت أبا عبد الله عليه السلام. Ibn Abi Ya'fur says, I heard Imam Sadiq alayhi salam saying, من تعلق قلبه بالدنيا, the one whose heart has belonged to dunya, is fixed to dunya. تعلق قلبه بثلاث خصال, then his heart is belonging and fixed to three characteristics. هم لا يفنى, he would have concern and worry that never ends. Endless worries and concerns, and therefore unrest and lack of peace. Amalin, amal with Hamza, amalin la yudrak, he would have desires and wishes which will not be met. Remember hadith about tulul amal, having unrealistic desires. Waraja'un la yunal, and he would have hope which would not be materialized. So when our heart belongs to dunya, when hubbud dunya comes and enters our heart, we would always have a stress. We would have so many desires that are not satisfied. We would have hope that is not going to be achieved, and we suffer. Sometimes people in the same condition, one of them suffers more because he has desires which are not satisfied. Imagine there is a person who is not, for example, a young man who is not married, but he's okay, and a young man who falls in love with someone and cannot marry her. Both of them are not married, both of them don't have wife, but the one who is fallen in love and cannot marry that woman that he loves would suffer a lot, cannot have normal life. Either he has to marry that woman or has to stop his love. Love is not always sweet. Love can be also painful if you are separate. So, if HUBB الدُّنْيَا comes, you would always desire things and you cannot achieve them. Two people, for example, have no house. One of them is happy to have a rented house as long as can pay the rent and the house is comfortable. He said, Alhamdulillah, I have a house and I can pay the rent and I'm comfortable. Another person thinks of having a very large house and keep thinking, when I can have a very large house, I can have a big garden inside the house, a swimming pool inside the house, I can have few gates to the house. Okay, both of them are in the same condition, but the one who has such desires would suffer. If he had that large house, maybe he would have gained some pleasure, but even then he would want more. But now that he doesn't have it, it's pure pain. So, this is a very important point, that first, realistically, wisely, and spiritually, fix what you want to achieve. Even fix your desires. Don't desire things which are not realistic, which are not good, which are not wise, which are not spiritual. And then, those things that you want to achieve, don't let lacking them make you suffer now. Be content about what you have, but ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for more. I can enjoy my bicycle and be grateful for that, and then at the same time say to Allah, please give me a motorcycle. I can enjoy my motorcycle, for example, and say, please give me a car. Of course, nowadays some motorcycles are more expensive than car, but I'm saying if someone buys a cheap motorcycle because cannot afford to buy a car. If you are content and grateful and feel that you don't deserve even this, but if you say to Allah, please, out of your love and mercy and unlimited treasures that you have, please give me something more. If it is okay, if it's not going to cause any problem for me or for other people, please could you give me more? But I am already very happy and grateful. This is okay. You are not going to suffer. But if you are not happy with what you have and you ask for more, you would suffer now, and also even if you are given, you would again suffer because you want something more, because now that you see what is available in that level, you want more. Then Imam Khomeini says, the people of Akhirah, the closer they get to the generosity and grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their heart becomes more tranquil, more happy, and they don't have any interest in dunya. And as Amir al-Mu'mineen says in Khutbatul Muttaqeen, in the sermon of the pious, لولا الآجال التي أو لولا الأجل الذي كتب الله عليهم لم تستقر أرواحهم في أجسادهم طرفة عين شوقا إلى الثواب وخوفا من العقاب. Had it not been that Allah has fixed a deadline, ajal for them, their soul, their spirits would not have remained in their bodies because of two things: shawqan ila thawab, their eagerness and yearning for thawab, wa khawfan min al-iqab, fear from punishment. So we have to end with this advice from Imam Khomeini. He says, "Ay Aziz, my dear brother or sister, or my dear child, now that you have become aware of the harm of this belonging to dunya, this excessive love for dunya, and you have become aware how it's destructive and can destroy your faith, can damage your dunya and akhirah, so decide and be determined that you can reduce as much as you can your belonging to dunya and attachment to dunya, and try to uproot this hubb dunya. And don't underestimate your life, and don't let this period of life that you have be wasted. Know that pleasures of dunya are very limited and mixed with pain and suffering, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you tawfiq and to help you free yourself from pain and suffering of dunya, and ask Allah to make your heart and acquainted with His abode of honor and generosity. وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. And whatever is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would be better and more endurable. May Allah inshallah grant us these requests that Imam Khomeini mentioned at the end, and make us free from belonging to dunya and being attached to dunya. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.